Good afternoon to my viewers in North America or in the Western Hemisphere in general. Good evening to everybody in Europe, and good morning to folks in the Pacific Rim, and welcome to the Angry Astronaut. I'm kind of picking up from where I left off yesterday in terms of what I intend to do in 2023, what launches are available, what launches are the most interesting, what you guys really want me to cover. Looks like we've almost doubled in our viewership over the last few seconds. We have people checking in. Yes, indeed. Please check in as to where you're watching. Cleveland, hello. Ohio, Canada, South Africa, Derby in the UK. Thank you so much. Marina, hello, Marina. Thank you so much for checking in. Once again, to remind everybody, Marina is our viewer in the Ukraine, who has been dealing with a great deal of hardship over the last year. Everybody, please keep her in your thoughts. Israel checking in as well. Thank you. Kentucky, Greece, Vancouver, London, all over the place. Ireland, the wild west of Ireland. How about that? Yes, so all over, and more people checking in all the time. Chesterfield, yeah, once again, thanks so much. So what's wonderful about the internet is the fact that we get this opportunity to interact with folks all over the world. And now this is you guys' turn. It's your chance to give me, your feedback as to where you want me to cover, what you want me to cover, where you want me to go. Obviously, regardless of whether I end up living in Europe or not, I'm going to continue covering what's happening in the United States. But, I'm going to be covering a great deal of other things as well. We've got people still checking in: Preston, UK, Maryland, Finland. Thank you so much, everybody. You are quite welcome, Marina. I'm so glad to see you logged in with us today and that you're safe. Really do appreciate that. So, as I mentioned yesterday before I lost my internet, as you can see, the background's different this time. A good friend of mine of almost 40 years, has allowed me to use her house and her internet connection. Just fantastic, because the internet is still down at my father's house, still having problems. So anyway, had this opportunity to check in with you guys from here, and we're all very grateful for that. So, that being the case, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to give me your feedback as to what you want me to do. Now, let me give you an idea of what's coming up really soon. What's coming up in the first quarter of 2023? The most pressing thing, or rather the most obvious thing, is a launch from Virginia of the Electron rocket, the first rocket lab launch ever conducted from North American soil. Rocket Lab is a New Zealand company. I mean, officially an American company, but come on, who are we really kidding here? All of the engineering, all of the manufacturing, all that pretty much happens in New Zealand still. But they are carrying out a launch from Virginia. That would be a very easy thing for me to cover. And by the way, Minnesota, thanks for checking in. Hong Kong, wow, so fantastic when folks check in from faraway places. That's a wonderful thing. Czech Republic, hello. Be quiet. The future moon astronauts of Artemis. Yeah, that'd be a great interview. Just to give you an idea of what interviews I have coming up very soon, though, an interview with the CAA, which is the British equivalent of the FAA. They've reached out to me a couple of times, especially since I've been so harsh on them lately. And I was very impressed. I must say, I am very impressed that the CAA have reached out and offered me an interview. Not a lot of government agencies would do that. Another thing I think it's important for us to keep in mind is the CAA, unlike the FAA, is not funded by taxpayer money. They actually have fees that they issue to the companies that they regulate. So airline companies, for example, give them their money, and that's how they operate. They don't get direct taxpayer dollars the way the FAA does. And since there isn't a lot of space flight flight going on in the UK yet. That means there aren't a lot of companies for them to offer fees to or rather to charge for their services. So that could possibly explain why they're so far behind. Get back to the UK before they do. I think you're absolutely helping them within the system of honesty and pricing. Thank you so much for saying that. I would very much like to come back to the UK, to be honest. And yes, we do have more USA launches. That's definitely something I intend to do. I'm not going to miss Vulcan Centaur. I'm not going to miss Starship. Those big launches coming up in 2023, I have no intention of missing those. The big, Rocket Lab, I can probably cover that unless it's happening at the same time that other launches are taking place. I think it will be very exciting to see the first Electron launch from North American soil. The first time only happens once, obviously, right? You only get to see these sorts of things once. I would very much like to see an Electron take off from Virginia. So that's a possibility. I have a viewer in the area, a member of my team actually, who's willing to help me with that process. So that, of course, is a very positive, something I'd be very interested in doing. Obviously, going back to Cornwall is going to be more complicated. It's going to obviously involve some funding. And you guys have already given me a tremendous amount of support up to now. So, I mean, like I say, I quite understand if folks, it essentially says enough is enough, guys. Enough is enough. So, if you guys would like me to return to Britain, I certainly can, certainly willing to. The funding required to do that may not be all that extreme. I would say probably $500 for the plane ticket, probably about $600 for the total amount of time that I would stay there. We're talking a week's worth of lodging and a week's worth of rental car. We're talking maybe 1,100 for the whole thing in order to go there, go back, etc. That's not a small amount of money. That's not a small amount of money at all. But nevertheless, if it's something you'd like to support, my Patreon, my PayPal, it's all in the description. There are ways to do it. Feel free to do super chats as well. Super chats are something that I don't get paid on right away, but everything helps. But nevertheless, that's what we're looking at if you want me to come back to Cornwall. Not an inexpensive thing, and I certainly don't expect it at all. Whereas going to see the Rocket Lab launch would be far less expensive. Just we're talking some gas money, which I can pay for, and then lodging for a few days or something, maybe $400, something like that. At the outside, I could probably do it for about that if we're including everything. Spaceport Cornwall remote, the vast majority definitely say do it from home. Go back to England, however, there's a substantial percentage, 38%, that want me to go back. So, well, I've told you what would be necessary funding wise to do that. I'm certainly willing to do that. Here's the reasons why doing it from home makes sense. Doing it from home makes sense simply because I'm not actually watching a launch per se. Now, according to what I've heard, you will actually be able to see the flare of the rocket, depending on how clear it is, from Cornwall. You would actually be able to see the launch. You'll be able to see it better, actually, from Southern Ireland, but it will be visible, assuming that it's not bad weather. But it's not about seeing the launch. Here's what I want to cover. Of course, covering it remotely means I can see the vast majority of it happen, no problem. Covering horizontal launches from home is a very easy thing to do. But here's the other side of it. I would also like to get the reactions of the staff who are there. There's going to be a lot of people who are heavily involved in this project, have invested their lives, their careers, everything on this successful launch. The first successful launch from Western Europe only happens once. And so I would certainly like to cover it. Certainly don't expect to, though. Not at all. I really don't expect that at all. But, that the advantages are, of course, first of all, to get the on the ground reporting of what's happening with the staff, with everybody involved, people whose lives and careers depend on this launch going off successfully. It is a very big deal, and something that I would like to cover in person. Now, on the other side of it, I would also like to confront the protesters in person. That's something I can't do from home either. I would like to give them an opportunity to hear me out. If they are supposedly open minded and educated people as they claim to be, then they should be willing to hear the other side of the argument as to why spaceflight is important and why they shouldn't be protesting this. And if they choose not to listen, then that's just demonstrating that they're not open minded. And I would like to show their reaction either way. And that's something I can't do, obviously, if I do it from home. Those are the reasons why it would be good for me to cover it in person, but it's certainly not at all expected, or even I don't even really anticipate that I will. I mean, you guys have done so much for me up to this point. What, it's just not even reasonable for me to ask for anything more. If you want to, feel free. Patreon and PayPal is the best way. Super Chat's another way. But in any event, do protesters make you angry? 82% say that they do. 17% say that they don't. I don't blame you one little bit. This is something they should not be protesting. By the way, I have been a protester in the past. I've protested against the KKK, for example. I've protested in a number of intense, events. But, when we're talking about protesting against something that can do the human race so much good, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd and something that, they should be confronted. And I'll tell you something that they're getting right now. They're getting, first of all, a roped off area. That's fine. They have a little area that they can protest from. They're also getting tea, coffee, refreshments, all that provided by Spaceport Cornwall. And they also wanted a big screen TV to watch the launch. Can you believe that? They wanted to watch it. Yeah, Kathy's laughing in the background here. I don't blame her. So they gave them everything except the big screen TV. Their approach was, let's placate these people so they don't come running out and glue themselves to the tarmac. But in any event, that's what's going on. So here's the balance as to what's going on right now. Virgin Orbit gets 61% of the vote, and Rocket Lab gets 38% of the vote. So yeah, it does appear for this short term, for the short term plans, it does appear the majority still wants me to go back to Cornwall. But once again, I need to emphasize this is a tall order. And once again, if you can't comfortably do it, then don't support me unless it's an easy thing for you to do. It's not worth it. Okay. I mean, it's not your responsibility. What was that, producer?
Watch content, like it, and share it if they don't want to financially contribute.
Yeah, that's another way. If you are not able to, my producer just gave me a great idea. If you're not able to support this financially, just share it. Share this content, share this particular video. Maybe somebody else might be willing to support it, if that's something you would like to see. Once again, I do not anticipate that this is going to happen. It is a tall order and it's a lot I'm asking for, and you guys have done way too much already. So, but if it happens, great. I'd be thrilled, and I'm certainly willing to go back to Cornwall, whatever it takes as far as that's concerned. But if I can't get back to Cornwall, I want to see the Rocket Lab launch in Virginia. Either way, I want to bring you a launch live. Within the next few weeks, I want to bring you either Rocket Lab or the Virgin Orbit launch. And I think both of them are going to be incredibly exciting. So that's definitely okay. To once again, those who have joined a bit late to review what we are discussing, where do you guys want me to go? What do you want me to cover? I'm leaving that up to you guys. We have some very big launches coming up very soon. Some of them more difficult than others to cover. Some of them more expensive than others. Tours at NASA and Rocket Lab. I've got some good tours coming up, guys, and a lot of interviews coming up too. Some very exciting stuff coming up. So I'll definitely keep you in mind there. And I actually don't need support for a lot of that. Sierra Space remains very open, by the way, very excited to grant me tours, in-person interviews with engineers who are working on Orbital Reef, on the Life module, on Dream Chaser, which is launching this year. I would assume that you guys probably want me to see that too. Want to see Vulcan Centaur and Dream Chaser take flight. All of those are easier. Those are easier launches generally for me to see, because all I have to do is drive there. that's not very expensive. And then, of course, it's just a matter of food and lodging. Of course, if they don't launch and you have to wait for a couple of weeks, then it gets more expensive. But that's all contingencies. I mean, we need to just assume that it's not going to be that long. It's not going to cost that much, and therefore I'll operate under that assumption. So we're talking any launches from Cape Canaveral. That's just a few $100s. If we're talking the Rocket Lab launch from Virginia, that's just a few $100s. None of those are tremendously expensive. Looks like we have something. The reason why I support going back to the UK, the removal of space debris, very important factor when so many flights of satellites. Yes, thank you, Wicked. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that's something I've been reporting on a great deal is the fact that Great Britain is so aggressively pursuing space debris mitigation. That's a very important thing for them. And I applaud them. Not just Britain, by the way, it's Europe in general is investing a lot of money in this, more money than anybody else. Oh my God. My God, Valkit, thank you so much. €100 just came in under a super chat. Blows my mind. Yeah, that just blew Kathy's mind too. Oh my God, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Best wishes from Belgium. Best wishes back to you. What an enormous amount of support there. You're fantastic. Thank you so much. Like I say, any support's definitely helpful. The super chats and of course PayPal, Patreon. And incidentally, I've added some new benefits to anybody who is contributing towards this coverage. Anybody who gives me support, Patreon, PayPal, or even a super chat, just send me a DM on Twitter that you gave me some sort of support. If you're not currently a Discord member, I will grant you a Discord membership. And I have a new feature on there called Ask Angry that I've added to my Discord server that allows you to ask questions to me directly, and I will respond to them within 48 hours unless something very weird comes up. But otherwise, that's a new feature on my Discord. You can get that for as little as $3, by the way, on my Patreon. Just Patreon member, $3, and you got it. So Japan would be interesting. Yes, indeed. I'm not going to go to China. Don't worry. China isn't going to let me close enough anyway. And given all the negative stuff I've said about them lately, I don't know if I'd be very comfortable going there regardless. But yeah, Japan and the launch of their new rockets, boy, exciting stuff happening there. And that's something we can talk about. And that's more of a long term objective and something I'd very much like to do. India, Japan, they've got very exciting space programs and something I'd very much like to cover. Obviously, substantially more expensive. So that's more of a long term objective that I'd like to work towards, hopefully this year. And of course, the launch of the H3 rocket, the Japanese H3, is supposed to be taking place this year. So too is Ariane 6. I don't know. I'm not as excited about Ariane 6, frankly. I'm more excited about Vulcan than Ariane 6, but that would be another possibility as well. My thoughts about Tim being chosen for Dear Moon, actually, I roasted him not that long ago online. You may have noticed that. I'm very happy that he's gone. I'm very happy that Tim is going. I congratulate him. It took a lot of hard work for him to build his channel, to get the amount of public exposure, Netflix and otherwise, that he did. It is fantastic that he managed to accomplish that. I'm with him all the way, but I think it's going to be quite some time, maybe 2028 at the earliest before he actually goes, which, by the way, I think is one of the reasons why they chose such young people, is because it could be quite a while and they don't want people to age out. Glenn, thank you so much. Really do appreciate your support. Dream Chaser's first launch is a must see. Yep, I will definitely keep that one in mind. Thank you so much for your generous support. Really do appreciate that. Like to see more on refueling for satellites as opposed to deorbiting. Yes, Steve. There's a lot of good projects coming up for that soon. As a matter of fact, I've got some working on right now. Go to Baikonur, just go sneaking in. Yeah, Baikonur is not a very safe place to go anymore. That's for certain. SpaceX, I'll tell you, it's a hard one. Any tours, any sort of meetings, because they are flooded with tons of journalists trying to get access. It's one of the reasons why I cover the things that a lot of people don't. I cover European spaceflight, I cover Sierra Space, I cover Astrobotic, because other YouTubers are not as willing to go out there personally. You may have noticed at the Astrobotic press conference where they unveiled Peregrine, I was the only YouTuber there. There was a representative for everyday astronaut there. But it was an employee. Not, I'm not to say anything negative about that. Great guy, and he did a great job for Tim. But I was the only one there in person, and that made a difference to Astrobotic. So these other companies that don't get as much attention, those are the ones that I tend to focus on and try to bring more information to you guys about things that may not be reported on as thoroughly. That's generally my focus. I will never turn down an opportunity to go see SpaceX, but it is a tough hill to climb to go see them because, as I say, they are overwhelmed with people who want to go see them. Tim Dodd has meetings with children, the Dear Moon Astronauts, just like NASA astronaut. Yeah, it is. Once again, I love what Tim's doing with Dear Moon, and I wish him all the success in the world. And I really hope that things happen for him sooner rather than later. And I hope it's as safe as possible. I mean, that's one thing to keep in mind. It isn't safe. It's going to be dangerous. Space is always dangerous, especially if it's going to be one of the very first tourist related journeys to the moon. I mean, that's very risky indeed. So yeah, I mean, he's got some serious guts as well. Just to be clear. Um, Let's see here. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks for the Tony for mentioning. Yeah, I do like SpaceX. Of course, I think they are the cutting edge of what's happening in solar system exploration, but they're not the only ones. If you check Sierra Space, their website, their promotional materials, they sound exactly like SpaceX. They want to do a lot of the same things that SpaceX does. They want to make the human species into a space faring civilization. That's very important indeed. Yes, that's correct. Yep, I've gotten, well, I do have invitations from them. If I could have stayed through next week, actually, I probably could have gone to do another tour of Sierra Space. But I have an appointment to see, well, not appointment, a dinner with my daughter in the immediate aftermath of New Year's Day. I haven't seen her in many months, and I definitely need to see her. That is my priority, and that's on January 3rd. I'll be going to meet with her, and I'll be getting a lot of good information from her as well. By the way, because as you guys may know, she's a nuclear engineer studying at Clemson. She has interned at a couple different nuclear reactors. She has worked personally on the ITAR fusion project out of Europe. She's been involved in that. I'll tell you, really good source of information. For that's been very helpful to me. No question about that. So in total space, yeah, definitely like total space. A lot of great colleagues that I've got, no question about that. So once again, to reiterate what we're doing today and what we're focusing on is what I should do both in the short term and in the long term. The short term launches coming up are Rocket Lab and Cornwall first. Those are the big ones, and I will definitely bring you at least one of those. As I say, the support can come in terms of either PayPal, Patreon, or if you want to go super chat, that's fine too. The better ones for me are Patreon and PayPal because YouTube doesn't take money out of that. But like I say, that's entirely up to you guys. Everything helps as far as that's concerned. So those are the two immediate ones. Then the ones that come after that are the first launch of Vulcan Centaur with Peregrine. That's a big one. And then, of course, the enormous one, which is the first orbital launch of Starship. That, of course, is something that will not be missed, period. I don't care what else is scheduled for that time, even if Vulcan Centaur is scheduled at the same time. Starship wins out. As much as I like Vulcan Centaur, Starship trumps everything. It's just too big of an event. So I will definitely be there. So those are definitely the ones coming up. Marina, happy for my daughter. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. She's definitely going to be. Sorry, I mispronounce things all the time, but it is indeed to be specific as to what she was working on. She was testing machine oils for a future fusion reactor. What they were trying to determine is what kind of machine oils would be the most resilient and hold up under the effects of neutron neutron radiation. So she was taking out various types of machine oils and blasting them with radioactive isotopes to determine which one would be the best machine oil for a future reactor. That's what she was doing as her direct involvement with that project. Let's see here. What other questions do we have going on? Starship has a long way to go. Yes, indeed. There's no question about that. As the internal architecture must work around the structural frame to be as practical as possible. Yeah, the shard, I agree with you. It is definitely the most promising and the most important rocket for the future of our exploration of the solar system. There's no question about that. But that's what makes it so tough. That's what makes it to where it's not going to happen overnight. Even if it does have a successful orbital test, there's still lots and lots of steps that this ship needs to go through before it's going to be ready to carry human passengers. That is a tall order indeed. But once again, to remind everybody as to what I have in terms of opportunities there, Rocket Ranch have given me the opportunity to report on that in person from their property. That being the case, we're only talking a distance of about 5.5 to 6 kilometers, I think, from the launch pad. I'm going to be up close and personal with this huge opportunity. My greatest thanks to Rocket Ranch, by the way, for making that possible. That's coming up super soon as well. So I'll tell you, 2023 is shaping up to be an incredibly exciting time for spaceflight. So many incredible things happening right now. And I certainly would love to cover them all, but I can't do that. So instead, what I'd like to do is just to cover as many of them as I can, as expediently possible. And once again, you guys have done so much to make all of this happen already. Your support through Europe was astonishing. And I gained a lot, even though I didn't see a launch from Spaceport Cornwall yet. Everything else I gained in terms of contacts at the UK Space Agency, the European Space Agency, Saxavord, I could go on and on. There's so much that I got over in Europe, so much in terms of relationships built that's going to provide you guys with some of the best content you have ever seen. So awesome stuff. What do I think about the new mandate that was released today enforcing NASA to include a second HLS landed on their 2023 budget? As long as they pay for it. Now, the Senate has supposedly allocated $10 billion for a second HLS. If indeed the government is willing to pay for it and NASA doesn't have to take that money out of their current budget, that's fine. I got no problem with that. As a matter of fact, I really think we need to do that. There is no guarantee that something as complicated and challenging as Lunar Starship is going to be ready by 2026. I mean, that's a tall order. That's 3 years from now. And think of all that's been accomplished, but all that still remains just to get Starship to orbit over all the time that they've been working on it. And then it needs to be human rated, and then we need to master low Earth orbit refueling. That's a lot of stuff. It'll be a Herculean effort on the part of SpaceX to get this ready by 2026. Very difficult indeed. So it's a good idea to have somebody else working on it. My personal preference is Dynetics, and now that Northrop Grumman has joined them, and they are former members of the national team, therefore they know a lot of the national team secrets. I really think that Dynetics and Northrop Grumman are a good team to have a second alternative for HLS. So I'm very much in support of that, but I'm still very much in support of Lunar Starship too. I think it's a great solution indeed. I forgot also the first YouTuber to chat with the BBC. It's true. The BBC, ITV, Channel 4, all of them interviewed me actually while I was over there. It blew my mind, and it was just because I was the only American journalist covering it. They were very interested as to why I was so damned excited. But I was excited because the first ever orbital launch from Western Europe only happens once. I mean, this is something that's been a long time coming, and it's finally happening. It's not just happening from Spaceport Cornwall, it's happening from Saxavord, and there's a new spaceport in Sweden that's going to be opening up too. European spaceflight is absolutely catching fire, and it's something that I'm very interested in covering, but not covering to the exclusion of American spaceflight. Obviously, what's happening over here is incredibly important, and it's not going to. Pardon that? Sorry.
Spaceport Sutherland in
Yeah,
Scotland.
Spaceport Sutherland, almost forgot about that. That's Orbex's launch site. I've heard a lot of interesting things about Orbex, and especially in terms of the advanced composite materials that they're using on their rocket. Tell you,
Cool.
exciting stuff happening all over the world, and I can't wait to bring it all to you. So once again, guys, I appreciate the feedback that I got today. It definitely seems that there's a sizable percentage of my viewers, at least, that want to see me go back to Cornwall. At the same time, though, I do acknowledge that that is a very tall order, and I certainly don't expect that that's going to be possible. However, if it does, I would be thrilled. Once again, we're looking $1,000 to $1,100 would probably be what was necessary in order to accomplish that. Not easy. I certainly don't expect it. However, on the other side of things, if I don't raise that much, I certainly am thrilled to go to Virginia to cover Rocket Lab. I want to go to the Cape to cover Vulcan Centaur here in the next couple of months. And I absolutely am going to go to Boca Chica to cover Starship regardless of what happens. And I'll tell you, all through this process, you guys have made all of this possible. And so, my response to you, this is your channel. You tell me what to do, and I'm going to do it because I am incredibly grateful for what you have done for me. And therefore, I am at your beck and call on this one because you guys are the ones making all of this possible. So until 2003 actually hits, until we see the most exciting year in space flight that we have ever seen up to this point, until that actually happens, to the great benefit of every spaceflight enthusiast, including myself, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.